I think for everyone, life is a journey of discovery. For me, I discovered the difference between a relationship and an arrangement.
Come on inside, push your way through the crowd, catch my smile, catch my stare, catch me if you can.
There are more than one form of relationship, and the conventional, monogamous, full-time, 24/7 cohabiting relationship is not the only one.
What some people call an arrangement, I would call a playfair. The humdrum, everyday business of life is excluded completely. It's about playtime. And I would say that this is one area where women can genuinely make some real money.
In the red dress.
I spent last year over $60,000 in gifts.
And got 0 sex.
If you're a kind, gentle, generous person, it's very easy to be taken advantage of, to not even get the value that you hope to get out of your generosity.
In a world where we are trying to promote gender equality, then no, a man shouldn't pay the way, it should be equal. But that isn't actually how the world works.
My mom really felt that the act of giving a gift was her language of love. And it happens to be the language of love of many women out there in the world today.
I've only known you for 20 years, and when it comes to talking to women, to put it gently, you're a fucking putz.
I would like to believe that a woman would go out with me and would want to spend time with me, not just for what I can give them.
The kind of girl you can get with money, that's the kind of girl you can get with money.
Somehow I came to this belief that the only way I could get affection was to buy affection. And no surprise that that led me to a lot of difficult situations, a lot of unhappiness.
He just needs someone who can give back to him as well as he can give. I mean, because that's who he is, he's a giver.
I seemed to be dating the same type of girl over and over and over, and then being surprised when it was just based on money.
You're the fucking Groundhog's Day of train wrecks. So that's what Dave's about.
In a town like Dallas, Texas, it can be very intimidating for anyone. There's beautiful people all around. In an effort to feel like you can fit in, you feel like you need to prove yourself, which is a fine line because, I was raised, you try to court a girl, you try to prove that you're worthy. And in an area like Dallas, you often shows in how successful you are, what you've achieved, the material possessions that you have. And I think it's very easy to get caught up in that world and to feel that the only way you can stand out is to offer. And so in my case, sometimes I tend to offer too much to the people that don't deserve that offer. I just got an email from a girl, the last girl I loved and actually still love, and haven't heard from her. And I had sent her a long email saying, I would like to try to reconnect and try again and all that. And she sent me an email to say she's dating somebody, but would like some money to invest in her venture. So that is pretty heartbreaking, actually. I don't know how to respond to that. And I don't even know if I should respond, given that she never responded to me. So. Nothing like having something to rock your world right when you least expect it. I'd just gotten used to thinking that I would never hear from her again. And so I was on my way, on my schedule, ready for an exciting day, and bam, that one's tough. So it's good that I'm going to get a workout because this one will be some motivation. My friend Christy said it's absolutely best that if she didn't get back to you, and now she gets back to me with the most impersonal but financial email, which kind of sums up why I'm in the predicament that I'm at. I guess it's good that I got that blunt wake-up call, but the fact that there's a financial component in the I'm dating someone email, I cannot believe it.
I didn't even realize I had a problem until we actually started making this movie. I was repeating a pattern of wasting money or spending money on the wrong people. It made me wonder why someone would want to date me. You know, who really is your friend and who's just kind of has a handout. What started as kind of a parody of women that were taking advantage of me turned into a personal journey of the root cause.
You know, I first discovered this world, I guess, many years after I'd actually entered it. Looking back on my dating experiences, all those kind of situations or frustrations that were so puzzling at the time finally hit me, you know, years later when I discovered that, okay, this is what it is. It's more of a sugar baby situation rather than just some kind of confusing date.
The women that I've met that he's dated are, they're pretty. They're pretty. They would be pretty on a shelf.
You like 24-year-old chicks with big tits, right? They ain't the smartest people to ever walk. You went to Stanford. They probably can't even spell Stanford. They fulfill that certain need that you have, which is what? Good looks, tight body, probably great in the rack, but they're not gonna be able to talk to you about your work or shit, anything for that matter, except, hey, can I get $2,000 to go to Neiman's? And your answer is, abso-fucking-lutely. Would you like that in cash or should I come with you?
What's fascinating to me is that you can be so smart and so aware and knowledgeable and, you know, have it together in certain areas of your life and seem to be so clueless in others. You know, so I'm an educated guy, but I was missing basic signals. You know, things that just didn't make sense. Even though I was, you know, good corporate executive type, the girl would have a nicer car than me, would live in a nicer apartment than me, and yet she would have a basic job. It never hit to me that there was some other reason for that.
I would like to see him date someone a little bit like older. I definitely think he is open to age, so more so on the younger scale, which I think could be part of the issue.
Age has nothing to do with this. I've dated everyone from my age to 20 years younger, and it's a similar pattern.
So what's my wheelhouse?
Short, unemployed.
If there's a pattern, it's an attractive, fit woman that, regardless of age.
If you set a trap, that's a mouse trap with the spring, and you put a fucking piece of cheese on it, right? You're gonna get a mouse.
I'm responsible for my own situation. I think that in some cases, I throw out signals that attract the exact kind of behavior that I'm trying to avoid.
I think that when he's dating, I think that if he could make himself a little more vulnerable, he's just so used to giving to people, whether it's financially, emotionally, mentally. So he just needs someone who can like give back to him as well as he can give. I mean, because that's who he is, he's a giver.
The dating experience here in Dallas got so frustrating because I couldn't meet the right person that I actually engaged one of these high-end matchmaking services. So to take myself out of the equation in the hopes that this service, they would promise that they would eliminate the gold digger, sugar baby type of person that is actually looking for that relationship. And I still have gone through the same pattern. So at this point, I'm pretty much hopeless.
You know, for me, being rational was how I approached my everyday job and career. So I thought maybe why not take the same approach to relationships? I've been in the corporate world for 20 years in all geographies and multiple industries. So I wanted to use the skills that I had gained and had successfully applied in every other part of my life to my personal life. To me, a business approach meant let me understand exactly how big this problem is and to develop a strategy or a proposal to deal with that. So in the financial area, there's no person I trust more than my friend George, who was a CFO, CEO by trade. I'm a little embarrassed to have you here. I thought instead of making this an informal thing, I would formally present it to you, and I ask you as a CFO and business expert to respond accordingly. Not think about it as a dating analysis, but to think about it as a business analysis.
Okay.
I've put together thousands of business presentations in my career. This was the first one where it was all about my dating history, but I tried to use the same rigor that I would apply to any other corporate presentation to this.
What was the catalyst for you doing this particularly? Were you doing it for all expense captions in your life, or did you just happen to say,
People were always accusing me of being too generous, right? You yourself
Yep.
said.
You're too generous.
So I was trying to define what is too generous.
Right. Okay. So let's find out.
So I created my first Quicken account in 1995, and since then I have kept a detailed record of all my personal expenses.
I said, you know what? I'm going to run a report that will, down to the penny, show exactly how much I've spent on gifts since I've been tracking personal expenses.
I kind of hesitantly created the report to show me all summary of all gift items of all dates. And the total gift value for that entire period since 1995 is over $225,000.
That's stunning. I mean, how do you do that? Were there large amounts of jewelry involved, or
No.
was there a car involved?
No.
No? That's huge. I mean, that's shocking.
Those are only the explicit gift category. So things like frequent flyer miles or hotel awards or dining.
I was going to say, does that include when you bought someone dinner?
No.
A gift can be many things. It can be cash, it can be paying a bill, it can be some other material thing.
The dollar value of the transactions ranged from $100 to $8,000.
I did not consider taking someone to dinner a gift. I did not consider buying someone a trip a gift. That would be a travel expense.
The average monthly spend was $4,663, which was more than rent and food combined for me on a monthly basis.
Wow. What's your average time to gift? I mean, how long did you have to know somebody before you would give them a gift?
I confess that sometimes I've given a gift without actually meeting the person.
Wow.
So
an upside down working capital.
I never realized the sheer amount of money I was spending on other people.
between 1998 to 2005, I was married. Once I got married, I didn't count a gift to my wife as a gift.
The first time I saw my ex-wife, it was in Queenstown, New Zealand, and from the first moment I saw her, I said, this is the woman I'm going to marry. I was 35 and had barely dated, so that was a fairly bold statement to make. I don't think she felt the same way as I did at the beginning. I think I probably wore her down. I sent her over 200 letters. I'd always thought that that's how you won a woman over, is that you send her little trinkets and mementos of your travels and letters, and only later did I realize that she hated all of that. I just remember my ex getting very upset with me sometimes for being too generous. She would say, "You're too generous. If we couldn't go to a game, I'd give away the tickets.
That's right.
I'd give away, air travel, etc." So that was a problem, though, for her. The girlfriend stage is when I kind of retreated back to steady state. So in this time period, almost all these gifts went to one particular person. Kind of similar to my ex, is she was convinced I was giving massive amounts of gifts to other people. She didn't think I was being faithful, not physically unfaithful, but being financially unfaithful.
Well, and I remember for a while she seemed to think you were like our friend DB, and that you were a player like that as opposed to a committed monogamous guy. And
some of the girls I met actually think I'm a player when the
Well, for this kind of money, I imagine they would. But yet you're some kind of ingenue.
So you think that maybe because of this, this is why they think, well, he's got to be a player, because he wouldn't be spending all this money if he wasn't getting something in return.
Sure, this is not normal behavior. I mean, guys throwing around a lot of cash generally are pursuing things on a much more shallow physical basis.
In my own mind, I kind of rationalized that behavior, that because there was no sex involved, it wasn't cheating, but I did give them gifts, I did say flirtatious things to them. As this relationship started to sour, that's when everything kind of really went bad. This is when it got totally out of control in terms of the number of people, in terms of the value of the gifts. This is the problem that really shocked me. I lost my way completely, right?
Yes, you have.
They were exactly right to end the relationship for this behavior that was not only inappropriate, but it was not fair to them.
This is fascinating because the people we lie to the most are ourselves. And the thing we lie to ourselves the most about is love, right? And relationships. And so the best way to step back from it, I would think, is to do what you're doing and just put it on a cold, hard facts basis, because you can't argue with it.
Going through the exercise in a rational way of just presenting my expenses as they are in the raw, brutal honesty of a data table made me really wonder what the hell I was doing.
What were you trying to achieve with these gifts? Relationships? Sex? Are you just a pleaser? I mean, there's some hole you're trying to fill here, and maybe you're filling it, but I think maybe there's a different way to look at it.
It was definitely not sex what I was looking for. You know me, I mean, I'm not looking for that. But I definitely was looking for something.
So this is an interesting addiction of sorts.
Up until that time, I thought this was kind of a humorous behavior. But when he threw that word at me, it really hit hard.
You know, I do get a rush when I give something. Just like, I guess, in other addictions, sometimes you need to give more, bet
That's
more.
Right. You build up a tolerance.
So for me to get that same rush, I almost had to give more.
Right.
At that point, I was thinking, you know what, this has crossed the line from being, you know, kind of funny to this actually might be a big problem for me.
You know, obviously I'm going to help you out here and look at this as I would any other business expense at arm's length and non-emotionally, but as your friend, and just given the background I have, I look at this and I think, wow, there's pain involved here. This isn't just a matter of, oh, my checkbook is lighter and oh darn, I regret spending that money. And when there's this kind of an outlay of effort, time, money, whatever it is, and it's not bringing anything back and it's unsustainable, that's what concerns me as your friend, is the pain aspect of it.
It's one thing to say, gosh, I spent so much on gifts. It's another thing to say you spent $80,000 in a particular year to 200 different people, and then to be watching that up on the screen and then having your friend say, what the hell?
I think the idea is to review this on an ongoing basis and really monitor it. Maybe we need to have a gift projection, you know, a forecasting.
Well, I think you need a gift intervention, frankly. I mean, I don't think you need a projection. You know, your projection should be zero, pencils down, until we figure out what's going on, right?
There are some addictions or problems that you can't just eliminate it entirely. So for me, one of the challenges is how do you manage something that's clearly a problem, but without eliminating entirely, because that's who you are.
At the end of the day, I keep coming back to, you know, what is it, what need are you trying to fulfill, and what is it that actually would constitute success?
My first response to that session was to say, okay, I've got an issue, I've got to manage it. Not eliminate, I need to manage it. He asked me, what am I trying to get out of it? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm trying to get companionship, I'm trying to get some affection, I'm trying to get a distraction from work. So now that I know what I think I want, I should go out looking for it.
I said to a friend, I said, okay, I really want to meet someone that I absolutely know is a sugar baby, to take all the mystery out of it.
Hey, Daddy,
I want a diamond ring, bracelets, everything.
Daddy,
You ought to get the best from me.
Remember introducing me to the woman with the list? The woman with the list didn't
How
get
many
it?
lists would I forget? A list like that, how would I forget that?
This was my first explicit encounter with a sugar baby or somebody, I really don't even like that term, but with a woman that was looking for something specific from a relationship rather than a relationship.
It wasn't even really a date then. It was more of a business proposal evaluation.
Right.
Before the date, asked her to say, you know, I know the situation, I know you're not really looking for a relationship, but come to the dinner and let me know what it is you're exactly looking for. And so we went on this date. I said, so have you been thinking about, what I said? She goes, well, I wrote out a list. And she literally brought out of her purse a list of exactly what she wanted. And so we proceeded to review the list even before the dinner came.
This coming from a woman that'll bang a freaking German Shepherd for 50 bucks. But anyway, keep going.
There was a racehorse, there was a car, there was a specific brand of jewelry, there were trips, there were lake toys, which I had to ask what the lake toys were. And she said, jet skis, those kind of things. And then finally at the bottom of the list was, and of course, trips to see you. So I was definitely not at the top of the list.
I could have got you that date for $300.
Me being so naive, I said, so did you also want some money? And of course, that was separate of a cash settlement or cash allowance per month.
She gave me a quote of $8,000 per month to be with her. When I asked her, I said, again, me being analytical, I said, well, how did you come up with that number? Was this based on some kind of expenses plus a margin or something? Just, no. Just what I think it would kind of be nice to have.
It was probably the most relaxed I'd ever been on a date because it wasn't a date. I knew exactly what I was dealing with, and I was fascinated.
So I was like, this is great. I understand the market value. Thank you very much for your proposal. I'll get back to you. Right?
When can we start?
Daddy, get the best for me.
Did you ever have sex with this person?
No.
Now, did you ever pay her any money?
Yes.
How much?
I brought her to Chicago, so are you counting travel expense or just pure cash?
Oh my God, everyone knows that expenses are not revenue.
I gave her $2,000 in cash and a trip to Chicago, and I gave her a separate hotel room where I didn't stay with her. And I wired the money to her account.
$50 hooker, he pays all this to her.
And I didn't have sex.
Right, and he didn't have sex.
The dollar value doesn't really bother me. What bothers me is that was the worst investment I ever made. Why did I go to business school with that kind of logic, right? I mean, forget about the emotional side. Just looking at it from an analytical perspective, this is the world's worst investment performance ever. I have an infinitely poor return on that investment.
No return on that investment.
Zero. I think the point is I couldn't make that connection. I didn't want to pay. I don't want to have to pay for sex, which is stupid because I would.
What? What?
You haven't had to pay for sex.
But I will someday.
Does it make sense for a male to pay for female companionship? Not for everyone, because some people don't have to. But when I'm 70 and I want to be with a 25-year-old woman, I'm paying.
I saw arrangements as a possible solution because that would minimize the drama and would allow me to be very explicit with my expectations and understand exactly what I was getting for all those gifts. Instead of worrying about whether it was money or not, just make it about the money. How did you become the king of arrangements or the person at the forefront of this type of dating?
Well, I created Seeking Arrangement really to solve my own dating issues. I've said that many times, but it really is true. I think being very well educated, and being really very much a nerd, approaching women was a big issue for me. And one of the things my mom told me when I was growing up was just focus on your school, study hard. And one day when you're successful, she said, just as practical as an Asian mom would be, your wealth or your success will attract all the women you want. So use that generosity at that point. So just focus on your school now. And I took that to heart, really. I channeled all that sexual frustration I had into my studies. So I did well, graduated with a dual degree from MIT, and I was still dateless. And that was like, okay, we need a dating site that's different from all the other dating sites out there. There was no place where your success, your wealth could shine through. The way I see it is your wallet, much like your muscles or your looks, is really that superficial element to get the person in the door. And of course, what happens when they're in the door is up to you to foment that love or that romance that's a lot deeper than what the superficial aspect can really deliver.
The first time I received money from a date, and I outlined this in my book, Sugar Daddy Diaries, was when I met a man for dinner who had messaged me just a couple of hours before on a Sunday night and said his date had cancelled, would I care to join him at a restaurant for dinner, and he would give me £500 for my trouble. And I hesitated when I read the email. I thought, oh my God, do I dare do this? It was in stilted English, so he obviously wasn't a native English speaker, so I was a little bit worried about where he'd come from, what sort of character he was. But then I thought, well, I'm going to a public place. He obviously is prepared to pay this, otherwise he wouldn't be asking me to do it. And it explicitly said, all I will expect of this first date is dinner. So off I went, and sure enough, when I arrived, he handed me a brown envelope of cash. And it felt so deliciously naughty. There was something very thrilling about that. And I went up to the toilet and counted it, and it sounds such a seedy thing to do, but it was a huge thrill. I was incredibly nervous, thinking, oh my God, what if he wants something more after dinner? But sure enough, it put me in a taxi home, and off I went home with my envelope of cash, and I'd had a lovely dinner, an interesting conversation, and I never heard from him again.
Guys, I'm a 60-year-old gynecologist. I've been married twice. I was very happy for 6 years and then for 6 months. And I've had several wonderful marriage-like relationships over the years, and several great relationships with wonderful ladies that I've met who've become friends, who sometimes are a little more needy than others. I've been willing to help. I do not consider myself a sugar daddy, but in some senses, I guess I'd have to be considered that, but I don't look at it that way at all. Throughout my life, I've always been giving and generous. I guess I was just raised that way.
I am a widow for 5 years, was married for 27. I'm currently seeing a man that I don't have to work while seeing him. He takes care of everything that I possibly want, need, or desire. He is fully aware that I'm not in love with him. I'm quite fond of him, but I go into this first and foremost as a business endeavor. There's a lot of tangents and facets to it, but yeah, primarily it's a business arrangement.
What's the difference between a relationship and an arrangement?
A relationship is an arrangement, much like a business relationship. It's an agreement between two parties. So as far as I'm concerned, a relationship is an arrangement. I think the problem is most relationships fail because it wasn't an arrangement to begin with, because they didn't talk up front about what they want or what they expect from each other. And the moment they have that conversation, then it becomes an arrangement, because it is about what you can offer each other, what you expect from each other, and what happens when things don't work out.
When I quite naively learnt about this culture of men paying for women at the age of 29, I thought that was something that other women did, but that perhaps weren't educated or didn't have any other opportunities and sort of resorted to this, or who were manipulating men. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, actually, this is what all relationships are based on. There is always some sort of tacit acknowledgement that a partner should in some way add to your life. Otherwise, we wouldn't give up our time and emotional energy for that person.
All relationships are about barter, no matter what type of relationship you're talking about. Am I getting the perceived value that I want?
If you imagine this sliding scale where you have hard, fast cash for sex on one end of the scale, and you have love-based, devotion and selfless acts on the other end of the scale. The low-maintenance relationship fits somewhere in the middle of the two. There is always some sort of transaction involved.
I think it's a mistake to think that playfares are just a straight exchange of sex and money. It's about selling erotic capital in the round. So you want someone who is going to be entertaining and charming and agreeable companion. That's going to involve all elements of erotic capital. I define erotic capital as having 6 elements: facial beauty, sex appeal, a good body, social skills when you meet people, skills of self-presentation, dressing well and smartly and stylishly, physical fitness and liveliness, and sexual competence, which is only visible in private, intimate relationships. If you understand the value of erotic capital, you will be far less inhibited about expecting and even demanding that you get a fair return for that genuine contribution which adds value to any activity that you're doing.
I believe there are a significant number of guys who are actively seeking quality relationships but aren't prepared to make big contributions to them.
These relationships make sense for both parties. They are for men who want some sort of fulfilling companionship, but they want convenience. Maybe they travel a lot, or maybe they just aren't ready for that full-time cohabiting relationship, and they are essentially investing financially as a substitute for emotional investment. And as long as you're honest about that, what is wrong with that?
Tom gets a friend, a companion, and a lover. He gets a daykeeper. He gets a housekeeper. He gets a person keeper. He gets a lot of things. From him, it's, yes, there are monetaries, but from Tom, I get, for the first time in a long time, a sense of relief, of comfort, of non-worry, non-stress. And I haven't had that in a long time. And that, to me, feels like the most expensive thing I could ever have.
This is not a prostitute knocking on a hotel room door and getting paid for sex, which you can't really, say no. There is very much still an element of choice in the women. The women are still picking and choosing the men, but it's the men who are willing to pay who have the advantage.
If you give some guy a blowjob for $300, it's a hell of a lot different than being in a relationship with him for 15 years, and giving him a blowjob every week.
I look at the relationships as a friend helping a friend. That's the way that I like to start it. That's the way I like to keep it. It has to be, hi, let's have a drink, let's get together, let's do some other things, and then we'll do some fun things, and then I'll certainly take care of many other things. I like it to grow. I like to feel like that we have a relationship here, as opposed to just a checkbook.
The research evidence that I've looked at shows that women can make much, much more money, anywhere from 10 times more money to 50 times more money than they can earn in an ordinary clerical job, white-collar job, service job, the sorts of jobs that women go into. And if they can make so much more money in having a relationship with someone who is wealthy and wants a playfair and doesn't want marriage, then it's really surprising that more women aren't doing it.
This is what men are doing anyway. I was dating men for fun who were prepared to pay. If I was going to date them anyway, and they're prepared to pay for the fact that I'm willing to be a convenient, low-maintenance girlfriend, which is what I wanted from a relationship anyway, it suddenly dawned on me that I'm offering something here that men consider to be a premium.
The money affords you the ability to be happy. It's not that it brings the happiness. It just eliminates all the negative factors so that you can actually be happy.
I've paid a few mortgages along the way. I've paid many car notes. I've bought a couple cars, a lot of trips, a lot of shopping. It just depends on the person, the relationship, the moment, and just how much I'm into them.
I realize the value of my own femininity, I think, just through dating these men in this sugar daddy world, and realizing that they were prepared to pay for my company, pay for the date, whether there was sex or not.
Tom brings me independence from the daily drudgery of the 9 to 5. If I choose to work, it's my choice. If I don't want to, I don't have to. That, to me, is one of the many things that I'm looking to get out of this. It's just choice.
People may look at it as something different, but these are people I really care about. It's not exactly traditional, but it works just fine for me.
Why do you think this is so hard for people to acknowledge, is it a societal thing? Is it just...
I don't necessarily think so. I think, on TV, you see the likes of the housewives, you see the millionaire matchmaker. So I think it's still okay for you to want to marry rich. But then when it comes to the sugar daddy lifestyle, where you are being spoiled and pampered, for some reason, society's kind of cringe, because automatically they think, well, sex is involved and money is involved, and somehow the combination of those two things create this explosive formula for judgment.
The whole time that I was plunged into this sugar daddy world, I felt like I couldn't tell anyone because it felt so morally wrong. The same reasons that made me feel quite irksome about it at the beginning were the same reasons why I didn't want to tell anyone. We are all programmed to think as a society that relationships should be based on love, trust, commitment with a view to longevity. So the idea that I was having some sort of low-maintenance relationship, even though there was genuine attraction and a real rapport and lots of fun and lots of emotional connectivity, the fact that the relationships were defined by the man paying the way made me feel like I shouldn't tell anyone, that it would be disapproved of.
These kind of relationships are not out in the open because of the pressure that people might feel, what one person might think another would think of them because of it. In our society, that's why pretty much everything is the way it is, right? Because people don't have the cojones to say, look, you want to be married? That's your deal, right? I don't want to be married. That's my deal.
Puritan culture has imbued women with such a negative, stigmatizing concept of what an arrangement is, that they feel that it would demean them and belittle them to engage in that kind of activity, and so they're inhibited about doing it. But I don't see that there's anything morally wrong about it. After all, if you think about it, intelligence half of it is genetic, half of it's due to education and effort. And yet we're perfectly happy to allow people to exploit their intelligence to make a fortune if they possibly can. So I don't see why people who exploit their erotic capital to make money should be denigrated in any way. We should give them exactly the same esteem as we do to people who exploit their intelligence or their athletic abilities or any other talent that anyone has.
What you've been conditioned to for most of your life is that you want a relationship. And what I've learned about myself is that that may not be exactly what I want, because I'm a very busy guy. I don't have a lot of time. What I really want is companionship. And that's something I think I'm going through right now, which is why I probably keep repeating the same pattern, is that I'm not sure I want a relationship. And that, I'm not sure is a bad thing. At my stage in my life, in my 40s, but successful, no children, who am I going to date? And once I've made the decision to be very selective, that I want a younger, attractive woman with no kids, I myself am seeking an arrangement. The biggest hurdle has not been to realize that, but has been to accept that. Why do I feel bad for wanting an arrangement, not a relationship?
What advice do you have for someone that's
new to this.
I guess I have very different advice for the guys and the girls, but the general advice is understand the lifestyle, go read about it, and then realize, what you want out of a relationship, and then be brutally honest up front. A lot of people who are out there knowing exactly what they want, and some are willing to lie and cheat and scam you to get what they want. If you are a guy and you're successful and you're willing to spend money, there's going to be a lot of gold diggers out there who have less than glorious motivations. But there are the true ones who are really out there looking for love. And if you can use your wallet to attract them, you now need to learn how to filter them and realize who is genuine and who's not.
Make me the one. You just click and connect in this brave new world with so many high-tech ways for a boy and girl.
I was on 2 different websites at the same time. One is seekingarrangement.com and the other one is whatsyourprice.com. They're not unlike any other dating site. You create profiles, you submit pictures, you try to interact with other people, but it's just much more of an explicit financial nature than other sites. So you're either generous, looking to meet an attractive person, or an attractive person looking to be paid for being attractive.
And the levels, the hierarchies that they break down, start at 1,000, go up to 10,000 or more per month. It was kind of exciting to get that first accepted bid. We exchanged emails, and then we set up our first date. She was not dressed up, her hair was like in a ponytail. She had looked like she was cleaning the house in basically sweatpants, and I gave her an envelope full of cash, and 20 minutes later I was out the door. It was my first experience. I didn't think that would be the end of it. It's my suspicion that she was in the business of going out on first dates only and collecting the cash, and there was no incentive, financial incentive, for her to go out on another date. So the next date, I bid $200, and she countered with $300. And so I said, okay, I'll go to $250, and that was accepted. This one, we actually went out to dinner. I had so many questions, I was kind of peppering her with what are you looking for and all this stuff. It was like a 60 minutes interview rather than a date. I gave her my cell number and said, listen, I'd like to see you again, and I never heard from her. It was actually not a bad date, but I don't think I really gave her a good chance to have, to feel like it was a real date, and maybe she didn't even view it as a real date. Scarlett was very aggressive in her sales pitch. She was looking for $28,000 to help finance her music career. Once she said the amount of $28,000, I said, well, how practically would that work? What if you don't like each other? What if we're not compatible? She goes, oh, well, that's why we have the trial weekend. You will be so in love with me after that, you will gladly pay the remaining amount. Which is interesting because she repeated that I am not a prostitute, that I'm not looking for sex for money, yet she was saying, here's a dollar amount, and here's an act that I will perform if you give me that dollar amount. But I'm not a prostitute. Emma agreed to a $200 date. She said very explicitly, please do not make me uncomfortable by bringing money to the date, because it made her feel like a prostitute. And anyone that knows me knows that I tried my hardest to actually convince her, are you sure? Are you sure you don't want me to? No, Dave, please, that just would make me feel cheap. And at the end of the date, she texted me immediately saying, I had a great time. Did you feel a spark? And I said, I enjoyed myself, but to be honest, I did not feel a spark.
At that point, she shifted and said, well, gee, what a loss. I should have taken the money then. She asked me to come back and deliver the cash to a secluded spot in the parking lot of her building. I said I would be glad to come back the next day, but I'm not doing it at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night to someone that I don't know. She proceeded to get increasingly hostile to the point where she did post a threatening message on my business Facebook page. She was a phony, and she was nothing like what her profile picture suggested she would be. Right now, I'm overwhelmed by the volume of requests, by the time it takes to filter through all the people that are looking for something. I was hoping that this process would be much more streamlined, it would be simpler, but it's a very time-consuming, arduous process to filter through the people that are actually a good fit for what you're looking for. If someone's looking for love, do you think they can find it through an arrangement?
Well, judging from the hundreds, if not thousands, of marriages we've seen on the website, the answer is absolutely yes. And the funny thing is the people who ultimately find love through seeking arrangement are truly happy because they've vetted through all those issues that they have. They have talked about their sexual desires, their fantasies, their quirks, you know, and all those things. And that really is the basis of any strong relationship. It's really completely understanding a person down to the core. And unless you are willing to be honest about that, it's really difficult to understand that.
When you set out to create your site, did you want to purposely make it so that people were encouraged to be open? You know, because I think what I've found is that even on an arrangement site, people still embellish or hide or try to pretend. And that was, to me, kind of frustrating because I was thinking that this site would overcome a lot of that resistance to be brutally honest.
I think that's an American culture because I recall being back in Singapore, you know, what you put in your resume was just very factual. You know, I am this, I have done this. But when I came to the US, I realized that to compete in the workforce, I really have to embellish my resume a lot more. And I see that it's very similar in dating. You have to really oversell yourself to get people interested. But that's just the nature of the game in America. I mean, I think if you don't sell yourself more than you are, you're going to lose.
Is it appropriate to apply business or economic theory to relationships, and why is that?
I think it's necessary to apply economic theory. My thinking is not that you take economics and you use it to find love, right? I'm not a self-help guru, how to find the love of your life guru. What I do, though, think is worthwhile thinking about how it happens because it helps us to understand, you know, our own personal life experience. I see what I'm talking about as being more descriptive.
I'd like to kind of bring you up to speed on my journey so far and ask you to give advice and perspective from an economist standpoint based on fact and rigor and real data. So let me share it and see what you think.
You do understand that you're having dinner with a sex worker, right? And you do understand that you live in a state, which, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is illegal here, right?
It's not, I mean, it depends.
And not just even being a seller, but I think actually being a buyer is illegal here. So we forget about social norms and all that. I mean, this is a sex worker arrangement. So then the question becomes, forget about the morality and forget about the legality, but do you want to have a relationship with a prostitute? Because that is what that is. There is no way around this, Dave. If you are paying somebody to have a relationship with you, it is prostitution.
But what's the difference between an arrangement and a really generous boyfriend?
The difference between an arrangement and a really generous boyfriend is that the generosity doesn't stop when the sex stops. The problem with arrangement is you're having a relationship with a woman who would have a difficult time saying no to sex.
No, that's not, I know we've interviewed people, I know many guys these are going on for 20 years, for a long period of time. It's an understanding. There just happens to be a financial component to it. Friends helping friends.
There is a big difference between I'm helping out my friend and I'm paying you regular allowance because we are having a sexual relationship.
It's not a regular allowance. It's not like you're giving a cash. It's just that there's an understanding. You know, it might be helping with bills. It might be helping with something else.
Anytime you put a woman in a position where she cannot say no to sex because she feels obliged to you, that essentially is prostitution, right? It comes down to consent. And that's the question is, when you go to bed with a woman on a Saturday night, right? Do you want her to be there because she wants you?
Yes.
Or you do want her to be there because if she's not with you, she's not going to be able to pay her rent next month? That's what you need to ask yourself with these type of arrangements.
It's hard to describe what you're selling in a relationship. It's hard to even know what terms to put that in.
In markets for sex and love, we don't have cash, and so they are barter economies. And so they require us to trade directly with somebody who has what we want. I have eggs, you have milk, and we can trade.
What are the eggs and milk in a relationship?
So what you're bartering is I bring to a relationship a variety of qualities. I have blonde hair, I have blue eyes, I have a PhD. That's all part of what I bring to the bartering arrangement. You have blue eyes, you have your height, your education, and all the other things that you bring. So there's a million different things that each person brings to the table. And you trade when you find somebody who's selling what you want to buy, right? And is buying what you want to sell. And that's the important thing that you need to remember in all of this, Dave. It's not just a matter of finding the person you want. It's finding the person who wants you back.
Marina helped me figure out what it is I was selling, and then to step back and think about, well, why would that be appealing to someone? So what I am selling, exclusivity, generosity, adventure, respect, and affection, passion, that's what I'm selling. I'm not selling marriage, kids, 100% of my time. When you add that up, someone has to be willing to buy that. How do you kind of figure out if what you're offering is a fair deal in this barter economy?
Well, here's the deal, is that it will if you end up in a relationship with somebody, it will be a fair deal. That is how the market works. So you start out at the beginning of the day, market opens, you set what you want to go for on that market. Maybe you're on the market all day long, and maybe over the course of the day you have to change your expectations about what your price is, and then maybe at the end of the day you end up by yourself. Well, the only thing you know about your price is it's none of the prices that you set throughout the day, right? It's only when the market closes that you know what your price is. So you always get a fair deal.
It was her conversation that made me think, you know what, hey, maybe I do have something to offer. And maybe, just maybe, someone would go out with me if I didn't give them something on the first date, or even in the first month, and we did something that was not financial in nature.
It seems to me that this gifting behavior is less about buying something and more about selling something. It's more about trying to signal to the women that you're interested in that you're a provider. So you're trying to tell them, I'm selling this quality that is Dave the provider. And so you're not really purchasing something. You're trying to tell them something about yourself. There's other ways to signal I'm Dave the provider without actually giving people gifts, without actually giving them money.
So what are some effective signals as a guy that I could send that are not overly generous yet indicate a desire to see where this relationship goes?
So the best signals you can send are signals that indicate that you've taken the time to understand her needs. Listening to what she wants and then remembering 6 months later that she said that that's what she wants. That's the type of thing that I think that women are looking for in signals. It's not just expense, and sometimes it's no expense. It's indicating care. Anybody can give cash. Cash doesn't send a very good signal. What sends a good signal is buying somebody something or doing something for someone that shows that you really understand them. Because understanding somebody is actually costly for you because you have to take the time to really think about who they are. Let's take the difference between buying a woman an expensive holiday or investing in your own home. Buying a woman an expensive holiday says, I want to have a relationship and sex with you for 2 weeks on a cruise ship somewhere. Investing in your home says, I've created an environment in which we can live together as man and wife. Two very, very different signals based on how you're spending. You don't have to pay somebody to be with you. You bring a lot to any relationship an enormous amount to a relationship without there being any financial transactions, without there being gifts, you really need to leave it behind. I mean, maybe this is slightly addictive behavior, but it's not like eating, addiction, because eating you do continue, you have to do, but you can actually leave this behind. While you, I think, know that, but I'm not sure that you actually really have internalized it. And that's what I think that you need to do. And I think you need continue this process of thinking of what it is that you have to offer, continue the process of what it is that you're looking for, and then try to look for somebody who's looking for the same thing and is selling what you want to buy, right? And buying what you want, you have to sell, right?
Right. For most of my life and almost all my dating experience, I thought about what were the needs of the other person and what was I willing to give. I finally started to turn the question around and to think, what is it that I'm looking for and what's my price? The biggest challenge is figuring out if a girl really likes me for me, right? And that, I acknowledge a lot of it has been I've been looking in the wrong places, and I shouldn't expect that person to like me, because clearly the way that I tried to get them and the way I met them is all about the material things.
Finally, an epiphany. Fuck.
How can I get mad at someone liking material things when that's what I lead with?
Yes.
Right?
You just have to let things come as they may. You get more by just hanging back, right? Because they're the ones that decide.
So
you don't decide, they decide.
So women decide.
Women decide, what?
That's one thing that I finally learned too, is that women, I don't know where I got this idea, but women didn't like sex.
Women love sex. Why do you think there's all these kids around?
But, so.
Listen, if a guy's fucking, he's got to have a partner, right?
But I always thought that women only would, they didn't really enjoy sex. They did
it as some submersive kind of submissive thing for a man.
It's like, to me, sex was the equivalent of like the guy going shopping with the wife. It was just something they had to do as part of the bargain.
How fucking pathetic is that?
But I'm just saying, but it's like, maybe it was my parents, maybe it was, I mean, I went to the same movies and grew up in the same environment you did, and we came to totally different conclusions, right?
Right.
I'm just saying, I thought it was something that they put up with, not that they actually sought out.
They put a clothespin over their nose and just took it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
That's fucking pathetic.
Somehow I came to this belief that the only way I could get affection was to buy affection. And I don't think it happened all at once. For some reason, the events and experiences and the places that I lived led me to this realization that buying affection was my only route to a relationship. And no surprise that led me to a lot of difficult situations, a lot of unhappiness. Understanding why I believed that was something that was important to me. I wanted to know, how did I ever come to believe such a thing? When everybody that was close to me would say, Dave, that's crazy. You have so much to offer. Why would you think that? I wanted to go back to where it began, to go back to my Iowa hometown, to trace my life and experiences and figure out, how the hell did I get to that belief?
Mostly I got my opinions from reading books, and it was always like the handsome prince comes in and rescues the little girl or the woman, and they ride off in the sunset and they live happily ever after. And that's what I expected. I expected that life, or when I fell in love, it would be that way. You graduated from college in June, you got married in June later, 2 or 3 weeks later, and that's sort of the end of the story. You go off then and you're married and your husband is working and you're at home with the children, just like Father Knows Best or shows like that were on in the 50s. So I had no expectations of career. I had expectations, though, of being happy.
The road trip and the talk with my mom helped me realize where I came from. But I was starting to think that everything I believed came from some fairy tale. I wanted to know more. Does a business approach to relationships? Does it make sense? What's your immediate reaction when you hear about how I'm trying to look at my own issues?
Well, for centuries, a business approach to marriage was what marriage was all about. Now we want it to be something more than that. Although it's very important to understand that economics, and in their broader sense, not just in their material sense, but where we live, what our class background is, that certainly affects how we do relationships, what we bring to them. But I think that trying to make a business case for marriage is probably not the best way to get a good relationship in today's society.
What is your view of relationships as it relates to a market or the economic side of it?
To reduce it to the barter is, I think, to really destroy what makes human relationships special. Whether it's, let's figure out how many chores we each do in the egalitarian marriage, or I'll support you in return for your deferring to me and giving sex to me, you're killing the relationship. You're killing not just the love part of it, but the human part of it, in which we respond to each other as individuals, not as two instrumental people who are running their life by a pocket calculator.
People say a traditional marriage, and I'm not even sure what a traditional marriage means.
Well, the most traditional marriage was not one man, one woman, but one man, many women. Throughout history, that was the more preferred marriage. There have been very many different variations. You've had one woman, many men. You've had ghost marriages, where in order to make an alliance with another family, you marry off your daughter or son to the spirit of their departed daughter or son. But there were two constants in marriage through history. One was that it wasn't about love and free choice. That was considered a very frivolous reason to get married. And two, it was about women's legal and economic subordination to men. Even when women were doing most of the work, it was the men who owned the property.
What were other relationships?
Some societies allowed a lot of premarital experimentation. Others, especially ones that had very strong class hierarchies, really controlled the women of the upper classes. A few allowed the women, as long as they didn't produce babies out of wedlock, considerable freedom to have affairs, because as long as marriage wasn't based on love, there wasn't this sense that it was a huge betrayal to fall in love with somebody else, to have a fling with somebody else.
Where did the concept that the man as provider, kind of the sole provider, where did that kind of come from, and is it true today?
Well, that's a very recent invention, actually. Throughout most of history, women and men shared the labor along with their children. There was no concept of a male breadwinner family in colonial America. Wives were called helpmates and yokemates who worked right alongside their husbands. That's why it was considered very frivolous to marry for love. You were working together. Then in the 18th century and early 19th century, as you got a division between work and home, a much more stronger division than ever before, men had to go out to earn money. But at the same time, you didn't yet have a market society that could produce drip-dry shirts or cleaned flour. It took forever to pick out the impurities in the flour that the man bought. So you got a need for someone to go out and earn the cash, but someone to stay home and process what the man brought home. And increasingly it became a sign of success and a way to just a minimum of comfort if you could leave your wife at home to support it. Even if your kids went out to work, the idea was, well, you leave your wife at home to take care of that. That evolved throughout the course of the 19th century into the ideal of the male provider, male breadwinner. As you develop the notion of love, the first version of that in the 19th century was based upon this idea, a new idea, that men and women were totally different individuals with different capacities, different interests. Men are the ones who like the public sphere and can do the public sphere and are ambitious and financially savvy. Women who used to be financially savvy and used to go out and wring the chicken's necks, oh, they're too helpless, they can't support themselves. This is when you get the idea women are passionless and that all they do is they give sex in return, sort of grudgingly, for being supported. And with this, you began to get these very romantic notions that were at at odds and tense with sexual attraction. And in the course of the 20th century, at the high point in the 1950s, when you had more male breadwinner families than ever before, more women who stayed at home, on the one hand, we developed this ideal, this is the way it's supposed to be. On the other hand, there were these undercurrents of discontent as women found themselves, yes, supported by a man, but also restrained and frustrated within the home.
Is it possible to have the true ideal marriage, till death do you part?
I think that it is possible to love someone all your life, but I do think that we really need to figure out new definitions of love. One of the big challenges, for example, is to make equality erotic. Right now, we have hundreds of years of socialization that difference and inequality is what is erotic.
For some reason, I came up with that idea that sex was something women put up with in exchange for all the other things that a relationship has to offer.
In many hunting and gathering societies, there is a joyfulness in sex that is just shared by women and men. In medieval society, the idea was that women were the more highly sexed sex and that they were continually sexually voracious. If you go back to Chaucer's The Wife of Bath, who is described as having a gap teeth, well, that was supposed to be a sign that this woman was particularly sexually voracious. It's really only in the 18th century that you get the invention of the idea that women are the pure sex, that they're not interested in sex. And then that gets all tied in with the male breadwinner idea that women provide sex only in return for being supported.
For me, growing up, the history, marriage was always about the fairy tale and happily ever after. And for much of history, it really wasn't about that, right?
No, and even when they said it was about the fairy tale, it wasn't about it. One of the things that's really new is that we have the opportunity to share breadwinning and homemaking much more fairly between men and women, giving them both access to a meaningful public life and a meaningful family life.
What 'tis to love, Shakespeare said. I had always felt that romantic love was an emotion, or a group of emotions from high to low. But it wasn't until after Lucy and I had done our very first experiment that I began to realize that romantic love was a primitive and basic primordial drive.
So how in the world do you study the brain systems of romantic love? We're using a special technique called functional magnetic resonance imaging. It's a major feat in neuroscience that we can see inside the brains of behaving humans. This technology divides the brain up into 76,000 little cubes. The machine is keeping track of the activity in groups of cells in each of these little cubes.
We put 17 people into the brain scanner. They were all madly in love, and we had them do three things. We had them look at a photograph of their partner who they were madly in love with. We had them look at a neutral photograph of somebody who, when they looked at that photograph, it called forth no positive or negative feelings. And between looking at that positive and looking at the neutral, we had to cleanse the brain of all that powerful feeling.
We were asking people to think so many romantic, emotional thoughts, just totally be involved in the romance. How do we ask them to cut that off after 20 seconds? Because each stimulus is presented for 20 seconds. And what we came up with was what we call a distraction task in psychology. And it's counting backwards by 7 from a large number like 8,011. Even though they were thinking the most romantic thought, they forgot about their romantic partner.
And this way, we caught the brain doing three things: feeling that intense romantic love for their sweetheart, counting backwards, and looking at a neutral photograph. And then, when you put all of these scans together, you can cancel out what they have in common and see the brain in love. And when we first saw the results of that, we saw activity in a tiny little factory near the base of the brain called the ventral tegmental area. The VTA is part of the brain's reward system, the brain system for wanting, for seeking, for motivation, for craving. And it suddenly occurred to me, romantic love has a lot of emotions. It has a lot of cognitive thinking process, but it's basically a drive. You can look at a face and know somebody's emotions. You can see whether they're sad or happy or surprised or disgusted. You can't look at somebody and know whether they're hungry or thirsty. In the same way, you can't look at somebody and know whether they're in love.
Why would nature give us these systems for such strong obsessions and such elation and euphoria? These are the building blocks of survival. What if you went for a long time without water and didn't notice it? You would die. You need to notice it. And when you get very thirsty, you need to focus your whole life around getting water. It's not just the survival that we need to carry on the species. It's not just because we're passing on our genes, but also it's important for the survival of the individual. We're protecting ourselves. We are able to live longer and produce better if we're walking around in pairs. Two people not only can live as cheaply as one, but two people also help to protect each other when they're walking down the street. They bring in more assets to the household. They are totally supporting each other.
97% of mammals do not pair up to rear their young. Human beings do. And we do it for a very special reason. We do it because millions of years ago, we had to do it. We were forced out of the trees were disappearing. We began to stand up on 2 feet instead of 4. Females began to have to carry their babies in their arms instead of on their backs. Females began to need a mate to help them rear their young. So pair bonding became essential to human females and suitable to human males. And we began to evolve the full complex of the human reproductive strategy. Around the world, people love. They have different definitions of what love is. But I've come to believe that we've evolved 3 distinctly different brain systems for mating and reproduction, and romantic love is one of them. The first is the sex drive, the craving for sexual gratification. It can be for a whole range of partners. Romantic love is the second of the 3 brain systems. It enables you to focus your mating energy on just one at a time. And the third brain system is attachment, that sense of calm and security you can feel for a long-term partner that evolved to enable you to stick with this individual at least long enough to raise a child together as a team. People often think that romantic love sort of comes in stages. First you have the sex, then you fall in love, then you feel a deep attachment. They're not phases. They're distinctly different brain systems. I mean, you can lie in bed at night and feel a deep sense of attachment to one person and then swing into feelings of wild romantic love for somebody else and then think up some sort of sexual image and feel the sex drive. You know, it's as if there's a committee meeting going on in your head as these different brain systems are, you know, sort of bouncing in and out. This is one of the reasons that casual sex is not casual. Something happens in the brain. Any kind of stimulation of the genitals can drive up the dopamine system in the brain and push you over that threshold into falling in love. And then with orgasm, there's a real flood of oxytocin and vasopressin and give you that deep feeling of attachment. Romantic love is a need. It's a drive. It's a craving. It's an urge. It's a homeostatic imbalance that evolved millions of years ago so that we could pursue life's greatest prize, a mating partner.
You know, I've always felt this chip on my shoulder that I had to overcome, and the only way to overcome that was through some kind of gift, whether that was a financial gift or a service. It wasn't all about cash, it was about, I'm trying to slay the dragon to prove that I can win the princess.
You know, what's so challenging about modern relationships is that we have all these old tapes in our head. Both genders come to this with 150 years of socializing. For women, we are socialized to think that we need someone to take care of us. He needs to be taller, older, wiser, stronger, and also, therefore, a little strange, a little mysterious, someone that we fear. Men, on the other hand, have their own real problems with this because you've been socialized, I think, to think that you don't have emotions to give people, that you don't have a core of interesting being, and therefore you have to give, whether it's knowledge or things or money, and that's another just terrible result, a terrible deformation of our full individuality that we're all grappling with as we try to struggle to get truly equal reciprocal relationships.
I guess for me, I'd always internally said I never wanted to date a woman that already had money.
That says that, in fact, despite your generous intentions, you absolutely understand that giving the gift is a source of power and a source of control in their life. So that's a big red stop sign signal to you about why you should stop giving money until you're over that.
Even with my family or friends, I also say to them, for a birthday or Christmas, I don't want a gift. Please don't get me something. What does that mean?
It means that you don't want to lose the control of being the gift giver. I mean, that may not be your own sense. Maybe I don't need it. But what it says to them is, I want this relationship to be permanently uneven. I give to you, you do not give to me. That's not the basis for a good relationship, whether it's in the community as a whole or in your personal life.
I didn't want the inequality or the unevenness as a control mechanism. I wanted to demonstrate maybe that thought I was lacking in other areas. But I think, kind of tragically, ironically, in that the behavior that I was trying to exhibit, which was being a nice, overly fair person, may have been viewed in the exact opposite.
Look, one of the major impulses of human beings is to give, to share. We like to share information, we like to share food. If you go back to the earliest societies, that's how they survived, is by circulating food and goods and people, rather than trying to focus it all on the nuclear family. And in most such societies, there's this notion of reciprocity. I give you something and I would be totally offended if you gave me back something of equal value. Because what you would be saying to me is, I don't want an ongoing relationship. Whereas if you accept the obligation of the gift, that means, yes, you understand that you are obligated to me in a certain way, but not in the way that you owe me a debt, that you want a relationship to continue. So at some point in the future, you will give me back something, and then it's my obligation to accept that. Because if I say to you, okay, now we're even, or no, I can't accept that gift, it's too much, I'm saying to you, I don't want a relationship. Well, that's the problem with giving too much. And it's interesting. We know of a couple of societies that ended up doing that. Native American societies in the Northwest, they had these traditional potlatch ceremonies where somebody would give away a lot of goods or food to other people. But when you got the epidemics, when the whites brought all of these new diseases and the kinship groups began to be wiped out in the old leadership positions, this potlatches became very competitive. And people were giving and giving and giving away in order to get something that was missing in their life. So I think there's an analogy for you, that if you give away and don't step back and allow yourself to be given to, you're missing something.
I sound, I guess, like an addict here, but are there some gifts that are okay? Or is it no, I mean, should I go on an absolute zero gift policy?
Yeah. I just have to say this. I'm a historian. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not in the advice-giving business. Normally, I run from giving people advice, but I will say to you, stop. Stop giving gifts. You're closing off a part of yourself that's very important to develop, but you're also either getting people who then feel controlled and behave in ways that are not natural, or who respond to this by being manipulative and want more and more and more gifts. Either way, it's a bad habit. Yes, by all means, do something for someone, but don't give something to someone until you have a much more stable relationship that is based upon the exchange of equivalencies.
Being on these sites where the financial component is so visible and so prominent, it's not healthy for me. I can't deal with it anymore. You know, I don't sleep, I worry about it, yet I can't stop. I've spent so much time talking about relationships in terms of financial expectations, time expectations, that I've lost the ability to converse with a woman on another basis. I've lost the ability to go up to a woman that I don't meet on that site and have some kind of a conversation with her where I'm not trying to sell her on my financial generosity. And that's really scary. I think for some people, an arrangement makes sense in that it's logical. It's not wrong morally, it's not wrong, so I don't have any problems with that. For a long time I thought that was for me, but it really doesn't fit me. Not only from a financial standpoint, but from that unevenness that's inevitably introduced when you start such an arrangement.
Yay.
Yeah. This was not a magical solution to my issue. This was just more of the same with a higher monthly expenditure. To truly fix it, I need to shut it all down. That's the business call, that's the right call as a human being. It was a mistake for me to think that I could manage my addiction through more stringent spending. I was rationalizing my behavior as entertainment or as, well, it's lower than it was in the past, but it was still destructive behavior. I like the concept of being open and honest about what you're looking for, but having a relationship based on parameters that do not include love, it's not what I want. Right now I'm focused on being successfully single, which means being comfortable with myself and being ready for a true relationship. Everybody has their own path to finding love. I don't think if I had not gone through this arrangement phase that I would be prepared to love in the most open and honest of ways.
I've been around this block before. Had enough of this revolving door. Been high, low, everywhere in between. Flying in my very own love machine. Not gonna leave one stone unturned. That's the last time that I get burned. Get the best of me, never gonna let it. Here we go, let me show you how to get higher.
People believe that in order for a story arc to be complete, in order to reach a happy ending, I had to then follow the stereotypical, happily ever after relationship. I mean, why do we associate utopia with meeting a soulmate and settling down and living happily ever after? Did we read too many fairy tales when we were younger?
We have a tendency to think that the only successful relationships are ones that end with somebody dying. And I think that's really too bad, because I think you can be in a relationship that lasts 4 or 5 months, 4 or 5 years, 10, 12 years, and have that relationship end and still have it be considered a successful relationship.
I would argue that it's quite fair for women to start thinking that actually their attractiveness has genuine economic and social value, and that they should attempt to get a financial return on that. Men do, so women should as well.
I never thought of myself as a kept woman, but if this is it, so be it. I've done everything else in my life. Why not let someone keep me for a while?
ask the question, have you ever casually gone to bed with somebody and fallen in love with them? And something like 35% said yes. Sex is dangerous. Romantic love is even more dangerous.
Unfortunately, there's been a lot of people who have taken advantage of me, and when I feel that way, I cut it off. I'm out.
I would take away, your corporate credit card and reduce your spend limit, right?
Put it to brass tacks, I would have liked the fucking money that he had to spend. You know how many bitches you can take to Golden Corral with that much money?
We asked people, why are you leaving the site? And a handful, quite a big handful of the sugar babies leave because they found love with a normal guy who has no money.
My parents are very much in love. They've been married for over 35 years, and I don't know, there's just something about that I feel would be nice to have. Yeah, something real.
Every relationship is an expression of our basic human drive to reach out and connect to others. And we want to be connected to in return.
Hey Dave, how are you? I'm just giving you a call as a courtesy reminder. Your proposal expires on Friday. I just wanted to let you know I haven't heard back from you. So give me a call at your convenience, 312.
Do the
monster with